People think the cheapest homes left in America are broken houses in forgotten places, sitting on land nobody wants. But that is not always true. In many small towns and rural counties, there are still real houses on real acreage, with porches, barns, wells, workshops, timber, pasture, and enough space to live in a way most suburban buyers can only imagine. The strange part is that some of them are not being ignored because they are worthless. They are being ignored because the modern housing system does not know what to do with them. A farmhouse with 5 acres can sit for months, while a tiny house shell sells online in a week. A brick ranch with a workshop can be cheaper than a new pickup truck payment stretched over time. A 2-bedroom country home with a pond can cost less than a down payment in a major metro. And still, buyers scroll past. Not because the dream is fake, but because the dream has details. The road is farther out. The mortgage is smaller than lenders like. The insurance company has questions. The county has rules. The septic system has an age. The appraisal has no good comparison. And suddenly, the house that looked like an escape becomes something most people are afraid to touch. That is the real story behind cheap rural houses with land in 2026. They are not always cheap because they are bad. Sometimes they are cheap because fewer buyers can solve the puzzle. The first thing to understand is that acreage changes the way people see a home. In a city, buyers compare kitchens, bathrooms, school districts, commute times, and square footage. Out in the country, the land becomes half the story, sometimes more than half. 5 acres is not just a bigger yard. It is distance from the neighbor's window. It is room for a garden, a shed, chickens, a small orchard, an RV, a side business, a dog that can run, a grandchild who can learn what mud feels like. 10 acres can mean timber, privacy, firewood, hunting, a pond, or simply silence. 20 acres becomes a different life altogether. But land also creates questions. Is the land flat or steep? Is it usable or mostly ravine? Is there a floodplain? Is the road public or private? Is there a maintained driveway? Is the property surveyed clearly? Are there easements? Can you build another structure? Can you keep animals? Can you run a home business? Can you park equipment? Can you subdivide later? Can you legally live in an RV while renovating? Every one of those answers can change the value more than granite countertops ever will. That is why the cheapest rural homes often look confusing from the outside. A buyer sees 10 acres and a low price and thinks there must be a catch. Sometimes there is, but often the catch is not one dramatic problem. It is a pile of smaller frictions that scare ordinary buyers away before they ever tour the place. Take the classic older farmhouse. Maybe it was built in the 1940s or 1950s, when houses were simpler, rooms were smaller, and the land around the home mattered more than the finishes inside. It may have a metal roof, hardwood floors, a big kitchen, a covered porch, and a barn that leans just enough to make you wonder whether it is charming or expensive. Online, it does not photograph like a luxury listing. The cabinets may be dated. The bathroom may be clean but old. The walls may need paint. The basement may look like a basement, not a finished entertainment room. So, the listing sits. But a smart buyer looks differently. The roof matters. The foundation matters. The heating system matters. The well and septic matter. The electrical panel matters. The drainage around the house matters. A dated kitchen is not the same as a failing house. Ugly flooring is not the same as structural trouble. An old porch may be repairable. A worn bathroom may be livable for years. In affordable rural housing, the question is not whether the home looks new. The question is whether the bones are honest, and the land gives you something the city never could. This is where many buyers make the first mistake. They compare the rural home to a renovated suburban listing without comparing the price, the acreage, or the monthly carrying cost. They say the rural house needs work. Of course it does. But the suburban house may need a larger mortgage, higher taxes, HOA fees, more competition, and no room to change your life. The rural house may need paint and systems checks, but it may give you a paid-off garden, a workshop, a second driveway, or a chance to add value slowly. The second reason these homes sit is distance. Distance is the quiet discount nobody wants to say out loud. A house can be beautiful, the land can be peaceful, the price can look unbelievable, and the market will still punish it if the nearest job center is 45 minutes away, the hospital is 30 minutes away, or the grocery store is far enough that you stop making quick trips. For some people, that distance is the whole point. For others, it becomes a daily tax. A cheap rural house is not just a purchase, it is a lifestyle trade. You may gain privacy and land, but you may lose convenience. You may hear birds instead of traffic, but you may also drive farther for parts, appointments, schools, and work. If you work remotely, internet becomes as important as the roof. If you are retired, medical access matters. If you have teenagers, the school bus route and activities matter. If you run a business, delivery access matters. The house price may be low, but time and transportation still cost money. This is why some of the best deals are not hidden, because nobody knows about them. They are hidden because the buyer pool is smaller. Most people want affordable housing close to everything. Rural America often offers affordable housing far from some things. The buyer who wins is the one honest enough to ask, "Can I actually live this way every week? Not just enjoy it for a weekend?" Then comes financing, and this is where the story gets even stranger. A home can be too expensive for a buyer, but it can also be too cheap for a lender to care about. That sounds backward, but it happens. Smaller mortgages often produce less profit for banks, while the work of originating the loan can be similar. A low-priced house may also have fewer comparable sales nearby, which makes appraisal harder. If the property has acreage, an older manufactured home, a mixed-use element, an unfinished repair, or unusual outbuildings, the loan can become more complicated. The price might be low, but the file is messy. That is why a $49,000 house can be harder for an ordinary buyer to purchase than a $300,000 house. Not because the buyer cannot afford the cheaper home, but because the financing system may not be built around that kind of deal. Cash buyers and investors step in. Everyone else watches from the sidelines. This is one reason some small-town homes look absurdly cheap online. The market is not purely telling you the house is bad. Sometimes it is telling you the financing path is narrow. USDA loans, local banks, credit unions, seller financing, renovation loans, land loans, and portfolio lenders can all matter in this space. But none of them should be assumed. The worst mistake is falling in love with a cheap acreage listing before speaking with a lender who actually understands rural property. A pre-approval from a big online lender may not mean much if the house has a private well, acreage value, older systems, or a small loan amount. The right financing conversation happens before the offer, not after the inspection. The third reason these homes sit is insurance. A buyer may see a low purchase price and imagine an easy monthly payment, but insurance has become one of the biggest shocks in housing. Rural homes can carry risks that do not show up in the listing photos. Wildfire exposure, hail, tornado zones, hurricane remnants, floodplains, long distance from a fire station, older wiring, wood heat, aging roofs, vacant periods, and outbuildings can all affect coverage. A house can be affordable until the insurance quote arrives. This does not mean rural houses are bad deals. It means the insurance quote is part of the price. A smart buyer calls early, gives the address, asks about roof age, replacement cost, distance to hydrants or fire service, flood requirements, and whether the insurer has concerns about outbuildings, wood stoves, or older electrical systems. If a property needs roof work, the seller may not care, but the insurance company might. If the land is beautiful because it backs up to timber, that same timber may matter for wildfire risk. If the house is cheap because it is in storm country, a metal roof and storm shelter may be assets, but they do not remove the need to price coverage. This is the difference between being optimistic and being prepared. Optimism says, the payment will be low because the price is low. Preparation says, the payment is principal, interest, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, fuel, internet, and repairs. That second number is the one that decides whether the dream lasts. The fourth reason is utilities. In town, people assume water comes from a city line, sewage disappears into a municipal system, and power is straightforward. In the country, the home may have a private well, a septic system, propane, oil heat, a long electric run, a gravel driveway, and sometimes no natural gas at all. None of that is automatically bad. Many rural homes run beautifully for decades that way. But each system needs to be understood. A well inspection matters. Water quality matters. Flow rate matters. A septic inspection matters. The location of the tank and drain field matters, especially if you want to add bedrooms or build later. Propane tank ownership matters. Heating fuel cost matters. A long driveway may be charming in October and work in March. Internet might be cable, fiber, fixed wireless, satellite, or barely there. The listing may say country living, but your budget needs to translate that into maintenance. This is where some buyers get scared and walk away. The better move is not fear. It is a checklist. Ask when the well was last tested. Ask when the septic was pumped. Ask where the lines are. Ask whether there are permits for additions. Ask about average electric bills. Ask how trash pickup works. Ask who plows the road. Ask whether the driveway washes out. Ask whether the house has cell service inside. These are not glamorous questions, but they are the questions that separate a cheap house from a good deal. Another category of overlooked rural property is the manufactured home on land. This is one of the most misunderstood segments in affordable housing. Some buyers see the word manufactured and immediately leave. Some lenders apply stricter rules. Some homes are older than financing programs prefer. Some may not be permanently affixed the way a lender requires. Some may have title issues if the home and land were not converted properly into real property. These are real concerns. But the word itself is not a verdict. A well-maintained manufactured home on owned land can be a practical path into acreage ownership. The key is paperwork, condition, foundation, age, HUD tags, title status, and lender acceptance. A manufactured home with a permanent foundation, good roof, clean systems, and clear ownership can serve a buyer far better than a stick-built house that has been neglected for 30 years. But the market discount can be severe because many buyers do not want to do the homework. That discount can be an opportunity for the right person. It can also be a trap for the wrong person. If you need conventional financing, strong resale, and easy appraisal, you have to be careful. If you are paying cash, using a local lender, or planning to hold long-term, the same property may make more sense. The structure matters, but the land under it may be the asset that holds the long-term value. Then there are as-is listings. Few words scare buyers faster. As-is sounds like hidden damage, legal trouble, or a seller trying to escape responsibility. Sometimes that fear is justified, but sometimes as-is simply means the family does not want to negotiate repairs on an older home. An estate sale may not have the energy or cash to fix every item. A longtime owner may price the home lower and say, "Inspect it, but we are not doing repairs." That can scare away retail buyers who want everything clean, financed, and fixed before closing. The smart response is not to ignore as-is listings. It is to inspect them harder. As-is does not mean no inspection. It means the seller is warning you about negotiation expectations. You can still check the foundation, roof, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, well, septic, pests, drainage, and title. You can still walk away. You can still price the risk. Some of the best rural deals are hidden behind ugly listing language, bad photos, and sellers who are not staging a dream. They are just selling a house. Bad photos are another discount. It sounds simple, but it matters. Rural listings are often marketed by people who are not trying to create viral real estate content. The lead photo may be a cloudy driveway. The kitchen may be shot from a bad angle. The acreage may not be shown properly. The outbuildings may be missing. The pond may be mentioned once in the description, but not photographed. Buyers scroll fast, and the good ones get missed. This is especially true when the property does not fit clean filters. A two-bedroom home with a large bonus room may never appear for buyers searching 3 bedrooms. A farmhouse with acreage may be listed as residential when a hobby farmer is searching land. A house with highway frontage may be ignored by home buyers who want quiet and business buyers who never search homes. A property with multiple lots may be priced like a small house, even though the land gives it future options. The opportunity often sits between categories, because most buyers search in straight lines. That leads to the most important idea in the whole video. The real advantage of cheap rural homes with land is not always the low sticker price. The real advantage is optionality. Land gives you choices. You can garden, you can add a workshop, you can store equipment, you can create a rental unit if zoning allows. You can build a guest cabin if the county allows. You can keep animals if the rules allow. You can plant trees, fence pasture, split a lot, run a small business, or simply hold space in a world where space keeps getting harder to find. But optionality only has value if it is legal, usable, and affordable to maintain. 5 acres of steep, unusable slope is not the same as 5 flat acres with road frontage. A barn with no safe roof is not the same as a usable shop. A second lot that cannot be built on is not the same as a legal home site. A pond that floods the driveway is not the same as a pond that adds beauty. Land can be wealth, but land can also be work. This is where the final third of the search begins. Instead of asking, "What is the cheapest house with the most acres?" ask, "What problem made other buyers leave, and can I solve that problem better than they can?" If the problem is bad photos, you may have an opportunity. If the problem is outdated finishes, maybe you can improve slowly. If the problem is a small mortgage, maybe a local bank can help. If the problem is distance, maybe remote work or retirement makes it acceptable. If the problem is insurance, maybe the quote still fits your budget. If the problem is a failing septic system, that may be a very different calculation. The best buyers in this market are not dreamers. They are calm investigators. They do not let a cheap price hypnotize them. They do not let an ugly kitchen scare them. They make phone calls. They check county records. They ask about permits. They price insurance. They test water. They inspect septic. They talk to local lenders. They drive the route at the time they would actually commute. They sit in the driveway and check cell service. They ask neighbors about flooding, road maintenance, and noise. They look at the property after rain if they can. They understand that rural affordability is not just found, it is verified. There are buyers who should avoid these homes. If you need every repair completed before move-in, rural bargains may frustrate you. If you cannot handle uncertainty, older acreage properties may feel stressful. If your job requires a short commute to a dense market, distance may eat the savings. If you need fast resale, a niche rural property may take longer to sell. If you cannot keep a maintenance reserve, cheap land can become expensive fast. A low price does not protect you from a bad roof, a dead well pump, a washed-out driveway, or an HVAC system that quits in August. But there are buyers who should look very closely. A remote worker with stable income and a need for space. A retired couple wanting lower taxes and a quieter life. A tradesperson who can improve a dated home over time. A family that values land more than trendy finishes. A gardener, hunter, mechanic, small business owner, or homesteader who can actually use the acreage. An investor who understands small-town rents and does not assume every market behaves like a city. For the right buyer, the very things that scare the crowd away can become the reason the deal works. Compared with tiny homes, These rural houses often offer something tiny homes struggle to provide: legal permanence. A tiny home may look cheaper online, but then comes land, utilities, zoning, foundation, transport, hookups, and the question of where it can legally sit. Compared with prefab homes, an existing rural house may already have a driveway, power, water, septic, address, mailbox, and tax record. Compared with building new, an older farmhouse may give you a livable structure today while you improve over time. Compared with suburban homes, rural acreage may trade convenience for control. But the comparison is not one-sided. A tiny home can be easier to maintain. A new prefab can be more energy efficient. A suburban house can be easier to finance and resell. A new build can avoid some old house surprises. Rural homes win only when the full picture works, not just when the listing price looks low. So if you are searching for one of these properties, build a simple decision checklist before you fall in love. First, confirm financing with a lender who understands acreage, small loans, rural appraisals, and the exact property type. Second, get an insurance quote early. Third, inspect the roof, foundation, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, well, and septic. Fourth, check county zoning, restrictions, flood maps, easements, road maintenance, and permitted uses. Fifth, calculate the real monthly cost, including fuel, utilities, internet, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and the distance you will drive. Sixth, ask what the property lets you do that a normal house would not. If the answer is nothing, the land may not be worth the trade. If the answer is privacy, food, work, storage, business, recreation, or future flexibility, then you may be looking at something most buyers are missing. The homes are still out there. Brick ranches on 5 acres, old farmhouses with barns, manufactured homes on wooded land, small houses with ponds, as-is estate homes with good bones, rural properties that look plain online but feel different when you stand there and hear nothing but wind through the trees. The cheap ones are not always easy. They are not always simple. They are rarely perfect. But in a housing market where so many people feel trapped between overpriced old houses and shiny new promises, these overlooked rural homes deserve a second look. The question is not whether cheap rural homes with land still exist. They do. The question is whether the reason they are cheap is something you can live with, fix, finance, or turn into an advantage. That is where the deal is found, not in the price alone, but in the gap between what scares everyone else and what you are prepared to understand. So before you write off the small-town farmhouse with bad photos, the brick ranch outside the city line, the manufactured home on 6 wooded acres, or the old house being sold as is, look closer. Call the county, call the insurer, call the land. Walk the land, price the systems. Be honest about the distance. Then ask the question most buyers never get to because they scroll away too soon. Is this actually a bad house? Or is it just a good property with a problem I can solve? Because in 2026, affordable housing in America is not only about finding a cheaper structure. It is about finding a place where the numbers, the rules, the land, and the life all make sense together. And for the buyer who can do that carefully, the homes everyone else ignored may be the closest thing left to a real shot at ownership.